Well, it struck me as I was looking at leading minds that entrepreneurs need to be very effective storytellers, because basically it's a promise of a possibility that they're selling to people and they're mobilizing people around.
Indeed, if anything, I think it's probably become too important. Namely, if you're a great storyteller, you have more success than warranted, and if you're a lousy storyteller, you may never get to first base. What I would then say, and I don't know venture capitalists personally, to what extent are they smart enough to basically filter out the charisma and look at the idea per se?
Well, one of the ways in which stories and innovative stories seem crucial in business is in changing direction, or in mobilizing people when things go wrong, or when interest is low and morale is low. You need to reinvigorate, you need to stimulate, you need to direct. And what are the kinds of levers that a leader can use to create an effective storytelling strategy to move people in the right direction?
Well, I wrote a book called Changing Minds, in which I actually used the term lever, and I talked about an arsenal of levers, so to speak, if I can mix the metaphor a bit. And I think the first thing I would say in answer to your question is depends who you are dealing with. If you are dealing with people who are highly sophisticated in what you're doing, let's say you're running a hedge fund and you're dealing with your partners who understand finance as well as you do, then the more academic levers of research and of reason are very, very important. If you're running for political office, people are not going to look at your syllogisms, and they're not going to know enough to evaluate your data. So then things like resonance, whether, I would think this would be an aspect of emotional intelligence, whether you feel on the same wavelength with the leader and he or she manages to convey that. I mean, the appeal in the first years of the second decade of someone like Sarah Palin is clearly not because she's particularly rational or because she has a lot of data at her fingertips, but people feel she's on their wavelength. She's one of them, so to speak. And so that's a very sharp contrast. If you are dealing in an educational environment with people who are not terribly sophisticated, I then talk about redescription. Redescription is presenting the same ideas in many different ways. And this is where the work relates to multiple intelligences. Some people aren't going to be convinced by a linguistic narrative. And then a cartoon, a comic, wit, dramatization, games, those are other vehicles where you can bring about a different way of doing things.